Hello, this is Sam Electric Ghost. We have Blue Bone.
Hiya.
Hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So we have Blue Bones on, and we just wanted to let everybody know we're the Sam Electric Ghost Show, and we interview indie artists from around the world, and we're talking to you right now. And you're from England, right?
Yeah, sort of near London. Yeah.
You had sent me that information. Let me give a little brief background on what you sent me. You're a 19-year-old singer-songwriter based in London. Are you in Cardiff, Wales? Are you actually in London or Wales?
Yeah, so I'm in London right now, but I'm at university in Cardiff, so a lot of the year I'm in Cardiff. Yeah.
Cool. So you're inspired by the Beatles, which I picked up on some of your songs.
Yeah.
You have a little Oasis sound in your background too. So what we like to do is, if you've listened to our show and the fans that know our shows, we talk to indie artists from around the world. We talk about their craft. We talk about what they're into.
Yeah.
And in your background, you said you have multiple influences from the Beatles to Mac DeMarco, Father John Misty, Red Hot Chili Pepper, Kendrick Lamar, MF Doom, Zeppelin. You're like an artist after my own heart because I have very influences myself. So I love talking to people who have that kind of eclectic reference point because I think it just makes your art interesting. So like, where do we want to start? Maybe to start, like, when did you get into music? At what age, and make you feel like you had something to say as a musician?
Well, I mean, so my first memories of music, I remember being like about 4 years old, and my dad this complex was like the best of British, so it had like stuff from like the 1940s. It was like Berlin and George Formby and like sort of wartime things like that. And I remember sort of enjoying that, and I heard the Beatles when I was before, and that had a massive impression on me. And so for a few years I just listened to pop music or whatever was on the radio, and a couple of bands I liked. But I'd say it was about maybe age 12 where I started to really kind of pay attention to music. Like the first album I bought was Arctic Monkeys' second album, and again that was like another moment where I was like, wow, like this is something I'd want to be a part of. Then I sort of got into like the sort of classics like Beatles, Sabbath, Zeppelin, all the kind of classic rock from like the 70s and stuff.
The more guitar focused bands.
Yeah, very much so. At least for those first few years. Yeah, I didn't get into hip hop and stuff till I was maybe 14, maybe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You get into like Wu-Tang, and you got into MF Doom, Brockhampton, like the collective Brockhampton. Which they're very creative. They do a lot of interesting stuff, kind of like the Odd Future Collective. They seem to be kind of patterned after that.
Yeah, I think Brockhampton are going to rule the world one day. I honestly think they're just shooting up. I think they're going to do massive things.
Yeah. I think they kind of took over where Odd Future had been.
Yeah.
And then Tyler and Earl just went separate, and they're kind of doing their own thing. But they're actually continuing what the original OF was doing. But they're taking it in a different direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think their marketing's brilliant as well. Like
that boy band thing that they're doing, which is kind of...
That's a stroke of genius, quite frankly, yeah.
Yeah, like a hip-hop collective that's going toward, like, boy bands. And which actually is more pop-oriented if you want to win.
Yeah.
In the market.
Yeah. And the way they speak out about, like, LGBTQ stuff, like, that's something that the hip-hop scene, like, really is, like, never seen before them, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, because I do my thing with, Josephine Electric, my alter ego. And, it's hard sometimes to get into hip-hop clubs when you're playing a female character.
Yeah.
as a man.
Yeah.
And, and the biggest type of draws nowadays are type of places, shows. And I've actually gone to New York, and I had a weird experience. I had a bunch of hip hop guys I thought were like overly macho, and I thought they weren't going to take Josephine that well. But they liked the fact that I had all this hardware. I had all my Moogs and stuff. So at the end of the day, they came up to me and asked me to do collabs as a producer. So I was somewhat surprised.
Yeah. Well, that's something I like about sort of hip hop and rap fans is I think they're a lot more open minded than your traditional rock fan, at least in my experience, anyway.
Oh yeah, I was so surprised because they were putting off this like machismo image with the
Yeah.
gold chains and like the 6-pack abs, and you're thinking, oh, they're gonna come and beat me down. But then they were all asking me about my workflow and asking me about my moves, and it's like they're like playing a role. They're like method actors. A lot of the people I met, they weren't what they appeared to be. They were totally different than their outward image. But let me so you were talking about how you started to get into the hip hop, and then you started to get into other things too. So maybe talk about you were playing bass and guitar.
Yeah, so I started playing bass at around 14 because I went to see Arctic Monkeys live when I was around 13, 14, and I saw their bass player, and I think, well, to this day I think he's one of the best bass players on the kind of indie rock scene. And I saw him live, and I was just like, again, I was like, that's what I want to do. I bought a bass a few days later. And so I sort of just played bass for a few months, and then within a year I bought this sort of rubbish sort of £60 electric Squire kind of rip off. And so I started playing guitar.
Is that why you picked that guitar, so you have that kind of Beatle type of sound?
Not even. I honestly just picked it because it was the cheapest one. Oh, because at that stage I'd never really played, sort of 6-string. So I was like, well, what if I'm rubbish at it? So I'll pick the cheapest one, and then if I'm rubbish, I've not lost much money,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to get a Rickenbacker or going to get like a Strat or a Telecaster. So you start off there.
Yeah.
But, it's just interesting because did you try to write songs with a bass, or did you really have to have a guitar to write it? Because like a piano, like I'm a keyboard player, so piano is like the base of everything I do.
Yeah.
But was the guitar? Did you write songs on bass, or did you wait until you got your guitar to actually start writing?
I wrote bass riffs. I wrote sort of, just sort of what I thought were sort of groovy little bass lines. But I don't think I wrote a, song, like an actual song.
Full song.
Yeah. A guitar. Yeah, I don't know. It's not easy to write songs on bass. You might write a funk groove or a beat, but
I mean, if you're Bootsy Collins, you might write the bass
of
a funk song, which is foundational. But you really, you're gonna end up having, Bernie Worrell really writing the structure.
Yeah.
Because as a keyboardist, you can just do more. The treble and the bass clef, you can just do more. You got the same kind of capability. You can do chords, and then you can do leads. You have to kind of do them sequentially, but on the keyboard, you can do them at the same time. But it seems like the guitar is like the writing instrument. So did you kind of start to use that as your writing instrument?
Yeah, I mean, my first sort of experience of writing songs was like me and my friend George. We'd sort of just start writing these like stoner metal tracks, sort of your classic like Sabbath worship, like.
Heavy, dark, heavy metal.
Yeah, I mean, just those songs that would just go bow, da 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 da.
Yeah, just the heavy riff. Because they got those riffs, the familiar riffs.
Yeah, just really, and that was how we sort of started writing, was just really obvious like slow stoner metal like riffs.
Yeah.
But the important sort of kind of change or moment was that we would always play Planet Caravan, from Black Sabbath's second album, sort of a really relaxed track, and that really pushed us in a direction, because that's like it's such a chilled out track, and that
it's more Beatle-esque.
Yeah, exactly, and that influenced. I mean, that influenced mine and his songwriting for the next sort of 2 or 3 years. I mean, even to this day, I still try and write songs that sound like Planet Caravan.
So do you find like that you still like the inject the heavy metal into the more melodic kind of power pop? Because I've been a big fan of bands like Alex Chilton's Big Star, which is a power pop kind of American version of the Beatles.
Right.
And they had very interesting chord structures, and because they went like slower and did some really interesting things with the chord tonal changes they would do on their songs. heard it, but yeah, it's just the choices they made were kind of Beatlesque.
Okay.
Because they were, I don't know if you ever heard the band. They're considered like a Velvet Underground or power pop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're foundational kind of alternative. It's like if you ever heard like people say not a lot of people bought the Velvet Underground records, but everybody that did actually created.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened with Big Star bands like Smashing Pumpkins, The Replacements, who used to do a lot of the alternative acts from the early '80s, mid '90s. Big Star was a big influence, and they were a Beatlesque American band, fronted by Alex Tote, who had been in the box tops as a teen star.
Yeah.
Wrote the classic song "The Letter," is where he came from. Yeah, that's just my kind of music history. But yeah, cause it's weird. I'm a keyboardist, but I love the Beatles. I love Zeppelin. I love Hendrix. I love bands like Who's to Do. And so I try to bring like that kind of a guitar aesthetic to my music. But I see you're like Simon Garfunkel influence too.
Yeah, I love those guys as well. Yeah, especially like Paul Simon's like solo work as well. I didn't realize until this year just how good he is on his own.
Yeah, he's like the African rhythms he would interject.
He's
very the South African rhythms are just very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like with the Clash. The Clash brought in like Caribbean and reggae rhythms into punk, which kind of created like a ska kind of thing.
That's really
which it kind of opened up like punk rock to be not just like the Ramones, so you could or not like just like the Sex Pistols did. You could actually interject reggae, hip hop, all these things into a punk aesthetic, which the Clash did like on Sandinista.
Well, exactly. I think that's what's so great about the Clash is actually like I would say a majority of their music isn't even punk music. Like they did stuff in the early days, but actually, once you get past that first album, there's very little that's actual punk music. It's all kind of other things.
Yeah, like Mick Jones was just enamored with other musical styles.
Yeah,
so
I've seen interviews. He's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so he brought all that in there. I mean, I think Joe Strummer probably would have stayed in the punk mode if it wasn't for Mick Jones and the drummer and the bass player kind of wanted to do more. So they kind of drove the band to do more, which I think is always cool because that's looking at your influences. It seems like you're in that zone where you could go a lot of different ways.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's definitely something I'm going to try and work on sort of more next year. Is I feel like I've sort of done the same thing for sort of 2 years running now, and I would love to just do something completely left field and something new that I haven't really done before. I mean, I'm sure people have heard it before, but something that I haven't done before. That'd just be
because it seems like your default is just kind of power pop, informed by the heavy metal. But you've got this kind of thing that if you ever listen to, you got a lot of Big Star in you, even if you haven't listened to it.
No,
well, they're Beatlesque. So if they sound kind of like Oasis, they sound like the Beatles. They're like sound like Badfinger, so they're in that same zone. Kind of in.
Yeah, I know Badfinger.
Yeah. So they're actually a better Badfinger than Badfinger.
Oh wow.
They have an album called the #1 record. They have an album called Third, and Third kind of devolves into like a Neil Young Tonight's the Night kind of in the ditch alternative kind of sound. If you ever heard the story of that, is like Tonight's the Night is this very erratic, kind of almost falling apart type of rock that became popular with grunge and bands like Nirvana, and they kind of doing this kind of on the edge of falling apart style. And Neil and Crazy Horse kind of were the big purveyors of that beyond the Velvets. We're actually more successful than the Velvets at that. But it kind of that kind of sound is always cool. It always interested me when something that's maybe unlistenable, but it actually has so much depth and actually calling in a lot of pain into their music. It feels like there's a lot going on. It was like a reaction to some overdoses in this band, and so it's like very music, and I've always been drawn to singer-songwriters that will kind of give of themselves,
Yeah.
In their work, that kind of show, that kind of tear a little piece of their heart into.
Yeah, that's just the best thing when you sort of hear a song and it's like you're in the room with that person,
Yeah, it's hard as an artist because I think it's painful to kind of reveal that.
Yeah.
If you're an artist, like a lot of artists will kind of, if you get into the heavy metal and really power stuff, sometimes you can't reveal a lot of sensitivity in that music. You kind of just making brash statements, or you're not really revealing anything. But when you slow it down and you start to do the Beatles stuff, then you can start to bring in more personal.
I think that's one area where like hip hop kind of, I don't know, started better than like rock music, was because like it seems like not from day one, but from a few years after like hip hop sort of started, they were already kind of ready to do introspective tracks. Whereas it feels like, I don't know, in like sort of classic rock and roll, you don't hear much like sort of introspective music where you're actually talking about real issues,
Yeah, you only get guys like Neil Young, like I say in Tonight's Tonight. You'll get like Pete Townsend talking about all kinds of weird, his personal issues, masked. But like Tommy has all this stuff going on. It's pretty deep. It's hard to feel. Yeah, it's pretty deep. Because Townsend's like different than the other rocker.
Yeah.
But very interested in guys who will go there. I think Neil and Pete will go there. But yeah, typical rock guys don't go there. They just don't do it. It's kind of the oddball. Lou Reed, Dylan would go there, but his stuff is more folk rock.
Yeah.
So the stuff you're working on now, I've seen your Spotify in the 2008 single and EP.
Yeah.
So did you want to talk about those or talk about the new stuff you're doing?
Oh yeah, I mean, I can talk about the old stuff. That was yeah. I mean, it's the sort of that thing of like I look back on it now and I think, there were so many things I could have done differently, so many decisions I would make now, knowing what I know now, and so I just feel like in so many ways I could improve it. I'd love to do it again. I'd love to scrap it and just do it all again.
Because in your EP, you sound like Fast, Sleep, Don't Shave, Repeat, Apollo 69, and Parasomnia with Glenn Taylor. And there's no Glenn Taylor. Is he singing with you or is he playing with you?
He does the guitar solo. He does
the guitar solo.
Yeah,
that's what I thought. But it's actually him doing the guitar solo.
He's a very dear friend of mine. We started playing together in I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, and we started playing off in like jazz bands at school because we went to school together. And then we did a band together called the Monkey Pit and we put out one song and we did a couple of shows. But then when I started doing my own solo thing, I was like, I always had this sort of guilt because I'd always looked up to Glenn. I'd always seen him, and he is just an amazing guitar player. So I had this thing of like, it was like a guilt of like, I'm here like, doing a solo thing, but like, Glenn's a way better musician. Like, I've got to get him on here. I've got to show, like help show people how great fucking Glenn is. And I'm going to get...
thought about making a band with him or you guys couldn't get that to work?
I mean, no, we did a band for a while called the Monkey Pit, and it was, four of us.
Classic. Then you went off by...
Yeah, well, we're all of that age where we're going off to uni and we're kind of, deciding who we want to be and moving on to other things. So, and it's hard to do a band at that kind of age. But then Glenn as well, like he also chose to go to Cardiff for university. So that's kind of made it easier for us to stay in contact and collaborate a lot as well.
But you still have your own solo ideas, so go doing like your solo projects.
Yeah. I mean, I always just sort of, whichever song I can't really think of a guitar solo for, I just sort of text Glenn and say, "Come on, drop a solo on this one." Yeah.
live, do you go get a drummer, or do you just play like acoustic? When you have you done live performances as Blue Bone?
No, I actually haven't yet. I mean, I would love to, but all the performances I did in the past with a band, it was sort of kind of given to me because either Glenn or our singer Max would sort of sort it out, and it's not that I couldn't set up a thing like that. It's just that I'd never had to, so I never kind of learned.
So
And
yeah, so you, like in producer thing on social areas like Spotify, without having to actually be in the pits, and the clubs that you can on the net.
Yeah, I would so love to perform live though. Like, I would take any opportunity to perform live. I mean, I'm going to try and work on that and find some shows to play, but it's not easy.
Yeah. One thing I do, which I've told people about, is like I have my home studio in New Hampshire, and I go and do Facebook Live performances. Then I stream using like a roll and go mixer that's hooked up to my app, put a pod, and then link to my Zoom R24 mixer, and I get a really good feed of the signal coming from my soundboard.
Yeah.
And I periodically do performances from my home studio, and I'll get like 3,000-4,000 people watching. So it kind of gives you a way to practice like what your live show could be.
Yeah.
From your own space.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could always take an acoustic guitar, hook it up with a little tripod, and put your camera on, and just like run it through some little mini mixer, and then you could start building up on YouTube like these live performances of you just playing acoustic or something, your acoustic versions of your songs, and then that could become the launching pad to actually maybe even bringing that to a small club, that because the player you could always do an acoustic, and that would give you a way to perform, without having to have the overhead of a band.
Yeah. No, I should look into that, really. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just another way of trying that now, doing that, using the net to do that. And then there are actually clubs in New York City. They have this project where they actually have bands come in and do like an unplugged acoustic performance in kind of coffee shop app. And then they put, and you can sign up through like Instagram and different services, but they have this whole thing. I'll probably send you a link there, but yeah, there's a whole thing about doing that. I think there's even this thing up on the roof in England. I've seen rooftop performances of like bands doing stuff. There's some project that does that. There's lots of opportunities to get into that.
Yeah. Well, that kind of coffee shop environment, or like, the sort of smaller, quieter kind of sets, I mean, that kind of suits me down to the ground. I don't think my songs really would translate well to a bigger stage.
Yeah, the bigger theater. Like if you get on one big festival stages, it's hard to the excitement to those big stages. They're looking for those EDM trance acts or the bigger acts, stuff like that.
Yeah,
they're looking for that. But the smaller 300, 200, 100 seat clubs, they kind of they like that intimacy of singer-songwriter category, which is kind of rare today because not a lot of people are doing, back in the 70s and the 80s, it was very popular.
Yeah.
Suzanne Vega, again, Liz Fair, we're doing that kind of singer-songwriter perspective. There was a lot of energy in that, a lot of energy on the female side. But yeah, I haven't seen a lot of guys. Somebody like Ed Sheeran, he's doing that kind of thing. But he's kind of moving away from performing stuff and doing collabs and stuff. But
yeah, I can't say I enjoy his new project, that collaborations one.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like his original concept of being a one-man band because that's what I like to do. But I think it was just kind of exciting to see a guy kicking it, actually able to carry it off as a single guy, just doing this band. Interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seeing how he was able to do that. Well, hanging up with other people, but I thought that his real genius was in the first stuff, was able to carry that off.
Yeah.
And he was able to go on big festival stages like that.
Yeah, but
with like a footboard that he was running backgrounds and stuff on.
Yeah. I think when he played Glastonbury though, he sort of got found out a bit. I don't know. He tried the whole one man thing, but I was watching it and I think he played Glastonbury sort of 2 or 3 years ago. I just remember thinking like I think much though as you said, I like his sort of one man thing. But I think if you're going to play Glastonbury, I think he needed like a bigger band. I don't know, like a drummer and a bass player. He got found out.
Yeah, it's always more impressive if you have a bigger band.
Mm.
But he was able to kind of carry it off. But it kind of gives you like a way as a solo artist, as a guitar player, like looking at how he did that is kind of interesting. You know, you could look back to like Richie Havens. Richie Havens at Woodstock is another example. How you can come out as like one guy on the guitar and do it if you have enough energy and enough dynamism, to kind of do it. It's all about. So on that, so those, when you got those albums and now you're looking back on your EPs and saying, oh, you could have done something different, maybe kind of talk about how you got to the place to get those out.
What do you mean?
Like what made, like, I don't know, when I talk to artists, I talk about like projects, and you created projects in 2018 that are out there. Like, how did you decide that those were the songs to put out and the ones you're going to put on Spotify?
Oh, okay. Well, I think very early on in the process, it became clear that I was writing a very certain type of song, sort of very quite sleepy songs. And I think the reason for that was, I don't know why, but I think I kind of, my best time for writing is like after midnight. So I found that I was always writing songs at 1, 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And naturally, that kind of influenced songs to sort of sound sleepy and tired, because I was, in fact, sleepy and tired. So that was really helpful. That helped shape that EP really well, because I was like, okay, let's write about sleep, being tired, the effects of staying up late, how that will affect your life, And it became quite easy after that, picking, not only lyrics, but picking what songs to go on the EP. And as well,
yeah, it has that vibe. It has the kind of like after midnight vibe.
And on the YouTube version, if you're on the YouTube, there's a Beatles cover of "I'm Only Sleeping" from Revolver at the end of it. I didn't put on that on streaming, so I was worried about getting the copyright. But that was again. Yeah. I mean, I was caught between that and "I'm So Tired" off the White Album. For doing a cover. I want the Beatles.
Awesome songs.
Yeah.
There's some companies now that let you do covers and handle the licensing for you. So, yeah, I actually did a couple of covers. I was doing some stuff that I was into, but don't serve it. So if they handle all of it, and then they let you know if it's accepted by.
Oh, right.
Because you have to kind of do a song that's like in the same vein as the original. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but kind of in the ballpark. Because I tried to do a blend. I actually tried to do a country that was radically different. I did like an EDM version of a country song.
Yeah.
And the people owned the music. But we don't like that, so they wouldn't let me do it. But you never know. But there are ways to do it. But it's cool. So the new project, which you sent me like the demo to kind of give me the sound, is like I really love new songs, and you don't want those being out. You don't want me to put those out on the episode. But I was listening to the demo they sent me this morning. It was like really great.
Oh wow! Thank you so much.
I kind of felt like it's in there, and the Beatles. You kind of had an Oasis.
Oh, okay.
For some reason.
Yeah.
I was kind of picking up on that. Don't expect the flowers, right?
Oh yeah,
The name. That's the song that's what it's gonna be when it comes out.
Yeah, that's definitely going on there. I think that's one of the better songs on there.
Yeah, I like the version you have now. I know you can always go back and change things. I'm kind of a raw kind of guy, like Velvet Underground. I like Tonight's kind of raw. Like if I go Hendrix thing. I might like his first take rather than his 10th take. You
Yeah,
know?
it's weird how you kind of get things in a good way on the first or second take.
Yeah, that's
The
a lot
10th
of
take
artists
is-
will get. Yeah, they become very obsessed with trying to make something, and then find out the first or second take is actually the best one.
yeah, it's like the Midas stuff. Have something that's like gold, and then you try and improve it, and you ruin it or something. Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes what happens is like the honesty of the first performance
Mm.
is when you're kind of really raw. And
Yeah, and that's
kind
thinking about lyrics and what it means to you. The fifth or sixth time you're thinking about the notes, but the first time you're thinking about what this means to you.
yeah, it's like so. Sometimes that energy, like I was listening to some original demos of Idiot Wind from Tangled Up in Blue, for Idiot Wind and Tangled Up in Blue on this classic album. And the original demos, the problem was he had like his coat, like buttons were the acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
Right. But the first versions of like Idiot Wind and Tangled Up in Blue are like better than the highly produced versions.
Yeah.
Because they really, really get at the heart of what he was doing. And it just has this little like external noise of his buttons on his jacket hitting the acoustic guitar, and then they play, well, we can't put that out. But on a bootleg like series, they put it out, and that version to me is so much better. I really don't care about the exterior. It sounds more honest.
I think that's what the that Beatles White album remastered, the 50th anniversary last year. I think that's what that proved. Like those Isha demos, like tracks like While My Guitar Gently Weeps or Blackbird, like those demos are just like beautiful. They're brilliant. And then you listen to the real one, they sort of sound a bit fake. It's
yeah, it's always the problem is artists will let the recording engineers and the producers come in, and that's fine. That's their business. But they tend to try to make something too perfect. Yeah. And I think this is where like Neil Young and Crazy Horse were kind of brilliant in that they really fought to keep the rawness, and in a time when that was not typical. The early Crazy Horse albums compared to like Neil when he was in Buffalo Springfield and when he was doing like Harvest, everything was really perfect. They were going over and over, studio methodology of making everything tonally perfect, sound perfect. But then Crazy Horse was this kind of reaction to that. This kind of punk aesthetic that, no, we're going to keep it raw. We're going to keep it loose. And it just sounds, like I said, more honest.
Although at the other end of that, I mean, if you take a band like Queen, I mean, they're famously like perfectionists, and then again, like their music is, that's transcendental. That's brilliant. Like, you can have the other end.
You can go that way. Like Pink Floyd too. Like we get a later Pink Floyd with The Wall, and
I mean, that stuff is
and rock. Yeah,
that's perfect.
Yeah, you have stuff that's like you go back to like the Beast, I'm trying to remember, Beach Boys.
The Beastie Boys.
Yeah, not the Beach Boys. Yeah, but the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson. Like Brian Wilson was known to be a crazy president. If you get the Smile and Pet Sound, like the level, but that went like too far. He couldn't decide. Like on Smile, he couldn't decide what was the right version. He kind of the perfection took over.
Smile project because he got tripped over his own mind.
Yeah, you can get tripped over if you get. Even Hendrix used to do so many overdubs, and people would look at it and it's like, well, they're all Hendrix.
Yeah.
Like, so which version of Voodoo Child is the best solo? Like, or they're all good, but I kind of defer to the first. That seemed to be like the best. But he would get into that too. Even though he was kind of a raw musician, it seemed like he didn't do a lot of like work, but he did. He actually would go back and do multiple versions. I got a big collection of his stuff, and it's like there's so many versions of like every song, and he would go at them totally different ways, and it sounded really, he didn't do that, but he did. And it's always interesting to see a guy like that. You get guys like Duane Allman and Clapton. It seems like they're kind of just like blues guys, and it just comes out of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But sometimes it's actually more practice than you would think.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one area where Clapton shines. Is his live stuff is brilliant. Like the infamous like Unplugged one, but also just like Albert Hall and stuff. His live shows are just amazing. They're brilliant.
Yeah, because he kind of has that jam band thing. I love the Allmans.
Yeah.
I love the Allmans, like Dickie Betts and Duane Allman. When they were really kicking it, they just had this ability to just be on the jam live and just do amazing things. They would do amazing performances. Clapton, the same thing when he worked with them on Layla, on Layla and other love songs when he worked with Duane. They just came up with this stuff that was like unbelievable. That's probably one of my favorite guitar-oriented albums because you hear Duane Allman playing with Eric Clapton, and they're doing this cosmic blues countrified stuff.
And is it still Bruce underneath? Is it still Jack playing bass on those albums? I think it.
Huh?
Is it still Jack Bruce playing bass on those albums? Because I know.
No. They have a totally different band. It was like a southern-based band in Florida. So like the Layla and Over Love songs is Derek and the Dominoes, and he had he had been playing with these southern acts from like Florida and South, and he linked up with with the Allman Brothers and specifically Duane, and they just came up with this whole new band. It's not clean, and it's like the Allman Brothers with this kind of personal stuff that Clapton, he's in love with George Harrison's wife. The whole album is about him being in love with George Harrison's wife, and that not working, and that's what it's about. So it's very personal, and it comes out that it's that deep, and then it's got the depth of the guitars going on with that kind of pain of a failed relationship that failed in many ways because he was friends with George Harrison, and he kind of broke that friendship.
Yeah,
and then
they share guitars and stuff, don't they? They
Yeah, it ends up being like a really awesome statement, even though it hurt him. It kind of he retracted from the world for like a year after the album came out because he couldn't get Patty Harrison to go with him. He failed. Like his whole thing was that album was supposed to make her go with him, and it didn't work. And then got embarrassed, and he just hid from the world for like a year and a half. But musically he succeeded, but personally he failed.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because that's the kind of cost of being honest. They can burn you. And that's why some artists, I guess, aren't as honest as they could be because you can get burned like that.
Yeah, I hear that.
But yeah, I digress. I always get into music history. So the new material you're working on, like the demo, what's the target date for the full project for that?
19th of August. Yeah. So yeah, about a month from now. Yeah.
So is it just that song, or is there a bunch of other songs?
No, I think it's going to be at least 4 songs, but hopefully we're going to get a 5th one down. Hopefully, but it depends on if we can do that, if we can get it right.
So you're still like in the mode of creating like EPs, because this is kind of a single oriented market. Yeah. But I create albums as well, and I find it like that I tend to do like every song as a single, and then I'll put the album out. But you're gonna put that out as an EP, or you're gonna have the individual songs come out separately?
No, I've always sort of preferred doing things as EPs because I think it's kind of a confidence thing. Like I've always shied away and sort of been scared of putting out a single, because it's like I think there's a confidence with a single. It's like, this is a good song. You're going to listen to it as a single, enjoy it. Whereas I think with an EP, you can,
it's before like an album. You
hide behind the collective.
Yeah, you can have stuff in there that maybe not is a single. Because the whole idea of an album is like there's maybe 1 song or 2 songs on an album that are the single, and the rest of it is part of like a theme.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a safety blanket, really. If I put out 4 or 5 songs, you know, people will have their favorites. Whereas if I put out one, it's like, oh, I didn't like that. Oh, okay, cool, never mind. You know,
Yeah, I kind of, it's
everyone.
weird. Like, I have a record contract that allows me to do like unlimited singles with my record company. But what I do is like a test bed. So I look at the metrics on what comes out, and then the ones that really kick end up going on an album.
Right. Yeah.
So I was like, it's like, okay, so I will let the market kind of show me. But there are some songs like I don't care. Like even if the market doesn't like it, it's part of the theme of the album, and it's still going to go on that album.
Yeah.
Even if it didn't kick off, it still might be central to my theme. So, and if the world didn't get it, it's still going to go on the record.
Yeah, I think I've always appreciated the value of songs that, you know, whilst they might not be brilliant, they might really reinforce the mood of a record. Yeah, like there's one. I'm obviously not going to say which one, but there's one on the new one I'm putting out, which I sort of think isn't amazing, but it's so in line with the ethos of the record. It's like it kind of has to go on there, you know.
Yeah, that's one thing that's gotten lost in this age of like people just creating their own playlist. Is like if you just pick a song from an artist and it's in an album, but you don't listen to those other songs, you kind of, to me, albums are like reading novels, and like great albums, they have these concepts and they have these themes. And if you just pick what you think is like, you just pick Pinball Wizard from Tommy, right?
Yeah.
Then you miss the whole thing.
Yeah,
like, that's not that.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you just pick that today, if that came out, people would probably just pick that and never listen to the rest.
Yeah, it's like walking a movie sort of 5 minutes into it. You don't really know what's going on.
Yeah, it's like that's like heavily into the album. It's not even. It's like in the middle of the record. So it's like you're missing most of the concept that Pete was trying to get you to get into.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so I totally get it, because today it is hard to get people to listen to albums. Though it seems like hip hop, like Kendrick Lamar and guys like Earl Sweatshirt and, you know, Brockhampton, they can get people to listen to whole records.
Yeah.
They're not just, people don't just listen to hip hop. They seem to listen to the whole album.
Well, I think Kendrick's, he's done well for himself because now he's established this kind of precedent that, oh, you have to listen to the whole thing. Like if you take To Pimp a Butterfly, you know, you listen to 1 or 2 songs, you'll go, oh, you know, that's okay. You listen to the whole thing and it's, you know, it's mind blowing. And I think now people know that he's done himself well, because now when a new Kendrick record comes out, everyone's like, oh no, you got to listen to the whole thing or you won't get it. And he's done.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like the Beatles, like Sgt. Pepper. Cause like Sgt. Pepper is like the beginning of that, you know, cause like we late 50s, well, mid 50s, even before that, everybody was just single oriented. You know, Motown and stuff. They would put records out that were just collections of all the hits.
Yeah.
You know, if you go back to a Supremes record, or you go back to a Temptations record, they were all singles, and then they would put them into a big collection and try to give it a theme, but it was really based on, they had released like all these singles over the last 2 months, and then suddenly now it's an LP.
And you can tell as well, because the covers, you know, sort of before 1960 or the mid 60s, all those covers, they'll just be pictures of their face or them, you know, performing.
Yeah,
and
I mean, their suits, like the Motown like uniform of wearing like the Dream Girl gowns, or the Four Tops or the Temptations all wearing like gray or black suits.
Yeah, but then all of a sudden with the Beatles, they're doing artwork because they're selling an idea. They're not always selling themselves. They're selling, you know, we're a fake band, you know.
Yeah, then you get the creativity in the record covers, you know, with like Sgt. Pepper's is like super creative psychedelic cover. Yeah. And then from there you get all the bands start creating things. Like Pink Floyd made these amazing covers.
Absolutely.
And they're very concept oriented, you know, and like Yes did a lot. But Yes initially did the kind of would just show themselves, and then they started doing like very artistic stuff. And as a keyboard player, Yes is a big draw for me. And then also like the Peter Gabriel version of Genesis. So like Selling England by the Pound and Lamb Lies Down on Broadway are like big, like analog, symphonic, like progressive synthesizer masterpieces to me. That's like where I live, is in that zone of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Genesis, and Yes, and you know, Rick Wakeman, and then even getting into like the use of a mini Moog by Funkadelic in Parliament.
Oh, see, I can't get enough of Funkadelic and Pop.
Yeah,
That is just.
Yeah. I mean, if you go back to like,
I was like, oh, like that's something special. But I can't get enough of those guys.
well, but you get Bootsy Collins doing this amazing bass, and you have Bernie Worrell doing amazing keyboards, and then you have
the guitar as well. He's just
the guitarist, like it's like unbelievable Hendrixian guitar, and then George Clinton with his humor and his kind of void coding, creating these certain noise and creating all these weird characters. Like ahead of where Prince was inspired by those characters like Camille, you create Camille and the Bob George character from the Black Album comes from like Funkadelic, comes from heavily listening to what George and those guys were doing.
Yeah,
which is like it's just amazing stuff.
And it had such a massive influence on hip hop as well. Like,
Well, yeah, almost all hip hop is sampled Parliament Funkadelic.
Yeah, I mean, you listen to Snoop Dogg's first album. Almost
it's all
is not even influence. It's just a straight up sample. Like it'll just take a sample.
Oh yeah, they just took full samples from Funkadelic albums.
Yeah, same with Dr. Dre.
Snoop, I mean
that is all just P-Funk. That is straight P-Funk.
It's total P-Funk. I mean, I did see a producer that was at a Moog conference for I think Snoop Dogg's but for the album The Chronic, they actually did some actual real live playing on a mini Moog that sounds like Funkadelic, but it's actually not a sample. It's actually using a mini Moog and playing in that style. So there are some stuff that they did for that album, for The Chronic, that actually isn't a sample. But they sampled so much stuff that you couldn't probably tell. But yeah, that's always like the big draw for me is like Moogs are like the truth in synthesis. That's like when you're a synthesizer player, like I don't like to use like sample what they call soft synths coming off of DAWs. I like to use like real Moogs, just because there's nothing. Kind of like if a guitar player, like if you're going to sample all your guitar parts instead of playing them, it's like if you're a keyboardist, like using a Moog or using a Jupiter 8 or a Prophet 5, or kind of like that kind of shows like you're a player, that you actually can play, that you're not just grabbing stuff, which is not that isn't making music, but it's not the same.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean.
Reshaping things rather than writing them.
Yeah, you kind of like there's a difference between it being a producer that's a skilled like Grammy level producer and then an actual musician that can play. Yeah, it's two different things, and both of them are good. But you can prefer, like I kind of prefer the guy who's actually being a musician when it comes to writing like indie music. If you get into hip hop, you can kind of say, okay, yeah, that's fine. You got the Bomb Squad, you got all these guys who've done that. But when you're actually playing, I prefer to actually play the Moog rather than sampling it. But I mean, when you go into like other genres, are you thinking of like using like an MPC or using different samplers or different plugins on a DAW and actually getting into that area of like trance and electronic music, mixing your genres? Like, what you do with that, maybe?
I mean, the tracks I'm writing at the moment, they're moving towards like sort of post-punk tracks, and so I'll move more heavily into like the use of synthesizers. But I've always sort of shied away from samples because again, like the Beatles thing, I'm just scared of copyright. I'm just scared of just getting struck off.
Yeah, the sampling, like you have to, like, I have some radical sampling machines that actually take stuff and totally like tape warp it.
Yeah.
I like to take a sample and then make it unrecognizable.
Yeah.
And then actually act like it's an oscillator. And then if I take a sample and do that and I run it through so many transmutations, it doesn't even sound like what it was.
Well,
that's what I like to do.
I mean, that's the genius of acts like Death Grips or JPEG Mafia, is that they take these samples and, they're just unrecognizable. They've doubled the speed or they've warped it down an octave, and like they're just the masters. Like,
Yeah, I think that's what the Bomb
amazing.
Squad used to do. That they used to take so many clips and stack them that you couldn't even tell where they came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that to me is the genius compared to taking like Ice Ice Baby, taking that Bowie Queen song, just running the bass line and acting like he did something different.
Yeah.
You know, but you know that it wasn't different. It's the same one with really not great lyrics over it.
Yeah.
Like you said, like Queen were masters at studio work. You know, and Freddie Mercury and that gang, they created like, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody and all the other songs they did that were just amazing. The level of effort.
Yeah, it's next.
And then you wonder today, like, could like a Bohemian Rhapsody like song make it through the editors or the gatekeepers in this world?
Oh, absolutely.
Probably couldn't do it again.
No, no, which is sad, really.
Yeah, because like that's why I'm always talking to guys like you who are writing your own music, because really the hope of music is in singer-songwriters like yourselves who are willing to kind of not do exactly what is trending in the, you know, the top 10. To me, that's where I always have lived, in the bottom 500 of the chart.
Right.
Looking for the Velvet Underground or looking for the big star or the, you know, the replacements or the Who's to Do, like bands that weren't super big but made a mark. And that's always what I've been interested in, is talking to people who are in that zone. It may be coming up and gonna get to a better place, but I like to talk to them when they're on that climb. So in terms of collaboration, do you have anything like on the schedule for the next year where you're gonna try to work with other folks?
Well, I mean, on this record, I was supposed to get my good friend Joe, who used to sing in another band I was in. You know, he was just going to do some guest vocals. I'm not sure that's going to work out this time, but as I said, I'm going to get, you know, my good friend Glenn to solo on one of the tracks, and then, but more broadly speaking, yeah, I'd love to collaborate with people like you know, as I said earlier, like the tracks I'm writing at the moment, they're sort of very like post-punk, sort of, I don't know, Joy Division or Sisters of Mercy and things like that. And I've got a friend who's very much into that sort of music, and I've shown him a couple of things, and he said, oh, you know, we should sort of work together. I mean, he's not a traditional musician, but he, you know, I think he writes a thing or two every now and then. So yeah, but I'm so open to collaborating with pretty much anyone. I don't think there's anything I wouldn't do. You know, I think
that's cool. Yeah, because I'm always like, I haven't been able, well, I have kind of a jazz influence in some of my stuff, and then I have this kind of like punk rock aesthetic that I like to do.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm not opposed to getting into like a Johnny Cash country like vibe.
Yeah.
Because I love listening to Folsom Prison Blues. You know, I love listening to Walk the Line, because that to me, country music is Johnny Cash. What you hear today in country is not, to me, what country is. It's like Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, you know, real hardcore, you know, like in the prison, Man in Black, Walk the Line. That's to me, that's real country, at least authentic country. And I like anything that's authentic, if you can, based on what I've been saying. But
no, I've listened to that Folsom Prison album almost like every week this summer. I love it.
Yeah, I think that album can inform you as an artist, just to how you can bring some real grit into your work. Like whether you're in, you know, because I'm a like electronic trance artist, I will listen to that album and I'll try to bring that vibe into what I'm doing. Even though it's not the same genre, you could still kind of take that and be informed by it.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, it's more like the humor as well, like the, you know, the sort of ad libs and things you hear between songs. Like I'd love to be able to have that kind of charisma. I think he's just brilliant.
Oh yeah, even a song like "Boy Named Sue." I mean, that song in itself is like, it's like tragic comedy.
Yeah, you don't even need to have heard the song, and you're already like, oh, that's just like so witty. Like even the name of it.
Yeah, he just had this thing that was like a Dylan thing. Like he brought the country, like what Dylan did, but he kind of had this kind of folk, real Americana thing going on. but also like the outlaw. Like he kind of like would elevate outlaw ideas, like criminal, like the person that's on the outside, the man in black is the idea, is a guy that's like the dangerous guy, the scary guy, the outsider guy. The guy could end up in Folsom Prison, you know, that, you know, and that was Johnny Cash, because he sometimes did stuff that put him in that category.
Well, I always like to imagine that in that recording he is just a guy from the prison. I like to imagine he's not Johnny Cash. He's just some guy, like some inmate.
Well, he felt real comfortable because he had done some stupid things. He did arson by mistake. He got into drug abuse. He'd been into things that category where I think he could understand their situation. That if he hadn't been Johnny Cash, he could have been one of those guys. And in fact, absolutely. He felt like he was one of those guys anyway.
Yeah, that record completely feels like he's one of them.
Yeah, he totally felt that way from what I've read about him, which is interesting because he could live in both worlds. He could be in, like, you know, Los Angeles, hang around at the highest end place, but also get down with some hillbillies and understand them.
Yeah,
you know. But yeah, that's always cool. Yeah, so I'm always willing to talk to artists when you guys get close to your release. So when your new EP is ready, we could go discussion of it and help promote it. This podcast goes out to 11 platforms. So when we publish, it goes out. We're part of Spotify. Anchor was purchased by Spotify. So we're on Spotify podcast. We're also on Apple. We're on Stitcher, Radio Public, multiple podcast platforms. And right now, we're actually being sponsored by Spotify. So you'll actually hear a Spotify ad.
Oh, that's exciting.
But yeah, we're always happy to talk to artists from around the world. And we encourage everybody who listens to The Ghost, listen to Blue Bones, click the links we're going to provide here. YouTube, give him some love by downloading that material from Spotify and subscribing to his channel and liking everything that he puts up if you're into his music. So we're glad to talk to Blue Bones today, and we'll talk to you when you have your next record coming out. And hope you have a great I think it's late night there, right?
Yeah, it's like 10 minutes to midnight.
Well, if you have a good morning when you get up.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, have a good time. I'll talk to you later. We'll talk to you again.
Brilliant. All the best. Cheers.
Goodbye.
Thank you.